Thanks for tuning in for Investment Insight today, guys. Thanks for coming on this pretty day. I have a couple of fun quotes for today. Of course, my favorite quote from anybody is this one: "Perseverance and spirit have done wonder in all ages," by George Washington. You just think about, obviously, when I was in school, they only have a limited amount of time to teach history, and just how much George Washington went through for the country. It's crazy when you think about it. Never take counsel of your fears, Stonewall Jackson. I think that's pretty much that you think about. I'm going to Washington, D.C. towards the end of this week, and where I'm going, all those areas around, Shenandoah Valley, Stonewall Jackson fought for years and kept an army that was always outnumbering 4 or 5 to 1 from winning until he died. The harder the conflict, the greater the triumph. George Washington. This is my favorite too. This is Warren Buffett. American magic has always prevailed, and it will do so again. And this is a good one from Warren Buffett too. Whether we're talking about socks or stocks, I like buying quality merchandise when it's marked down, from Warren Buffett. So I think that's really thing. So obviously, Investment Insights educational space. We do our investment information. We need to seek out legal, accounting, and tax advice. We need situation to make a decision. So that's me talking fast. That's how I would normally talk if I did learn to slow down, if you guys want to know the truth. And so, what's up with all the market volatility? Yesterday was especially telling because in the morning when I got up, I got up at 3 a.m. to check what was going on in Europe and Asia. And then at about 4 a.m., interest rates had gone up to the long-term resistance level, which was 3.19% of the 10-year Treasury. Just so you guys are already aware, last week the Federal Reserve raised interest rates 0.5 point. And the Federal Reserve really started all the recent volatility 6 weeks ago by basically making some statements that they to try to get inflation down. And they've made some mistakes along the way. One of the Federal Reserve vice chair said, we're going to start burning money in our May meeting, which they announced they were going to start burning some money. And on Monday afternoon, yesterday, one of the Federal Reserve men who's not voting said, we can't control what happens with the economy. Not a great statement to make. Even if you don't know the answer, sometimes there's this old term, you got to fake it till you make it. Sometimes when there's a crisis, I always remember a lot of times when George W. Bush would talk, a lot of people towards the end started losing confidence in him because he couldn't do the right speech. And the same thing was I remember when President Obama did his first State of the Union address, he really messed up, and the market had a bad week because he kind of stumbled his words, didn't know what to say. And so it's very important what you say, what you speak. Not that the markets kind of get better, but it makes a difference. And so yesterday, for instance, the 10-year Treasury. Anybody know why the 10-year Treasury matters so much? Anybody get Social Security here? Well, there's these things in Social Security where they have extra money that comes in. And all government debt is pretty much put into 10-year Treasuries. So most of the debt, the most marketable debt in the world, the largest amount of money in the world that's in debt is in 10-year Treasuries. So the 10-year Treasury really dictates what you're going to pay in your 30-year mortgage, what you're going to pay, what your CDs are going to pay in the interest rate, what you're going to pay on a car loan, what housing is worth. It dictates all of that stuff. So the 10-year Treasury, because so many people use it as a vehicle, it's a very, very, very important part of investment. And so yesterday, at one point, the 10-year Treasury hit 3.19%. Now, just so you guys know, since 2007, the 10-year Treasury has not been above 3.2%. So for the last 15 years, interest rates have been lower than they were at one point yesterday morning. But the crazy part is, by the end of the day, the 10-year Treasury went from 3.9 to 2.92% yesterday. And so oddly enough, the funny part is interest rate actually went down yesterday. And when interest rates go down, that tends to be good for stocks. And so what we saw yesterday was truly unique because it is the definition of panic. Because things start breaking down and they don't make a lot of sense. Now, so to me, the market has to understand, like yesterday, that they can handle higher rates. Now, all you guys are here. I mean, I was born during the period of time, but Jimena and Kimberly weren't. But you guys have seen higher than 3% interest rates on stuff. This is not a truly unique thing for history, but right now, it is one of the biggest issues affecting investments is what is happening with interest rates. And so we'll explain a little bit why that matters, because you have inflation and you have recession. But then you have stagflation, which is inflation with a recession. And so you got all these different thoughts going on. And so we're talking about what is causing all this and what's affecting. And then how do we make money off of it? So that's really what we want to talk about today is why is it going on? And then how do we make money off it? Because as an investor, as we said in our video yesterday, everybody has a choice. You can panic, you can do nothing, or you can think proactively. If you think about it, most people in the world, when something bad happens to them, what do? No.
Oh, really?
They stay still.
Most people?
Yep. They don't do anything. If you think about it, and you can say it's panic because they just freeze. But if there's a whole thing like, I used to love a TV show, which is terrible TV, but it's called Scare Tactics. It's where people come in and they basically threaten to kill you. And 95% of people on that show, when the person would come at them with a gun, would do what? Freeze. Or 90%, maybe 85. 5 or 10% people would run, and 1% of people would fight back. And if you think about it, it really shows us as humans on how we handle investments too, because most people, if things are going down, they just do nothing. Some people will panic and they'll sell everything, go to cash. Some people will buy more. One of my favorite stories was, and you guys all know this here because most of you that were customers back in 2020 when COVID was going on, we called everybody and we asked people, hey, this is a good time to buy stocks. The market's down 32%. Let's buy some investments. How many people do you think did? 5. Now, everybody should wish they would have. Because the S&P was at 2,600. Today it's 4,000. but very few people did. And so why is the volatility increasing so much? Well, it really goes down to we have 3 major things that are hurting investments right now that are just somewhat beyond our control. First thing is Russia, Ukraine. Then you got China. I don't know if you guys saw it yesterday, but in Shanghai, a bunch of workers at the Apple plant that makes iPads got tired of being locked in that factory. So you know what they did? This weekend, they bolted. They ran. And so there's these images of all these workers in white coats trying to strangle people and keep them from leaving the factory. And you should watch the video. They're all running out because they haven't been out of that factory in probably 6 weeks or 8 weeks to see their family. They've locked them in that factory without leaving there for 6 to 8 weeks. Now, you can imagine in America if we tried to do that, right? I mean, I couldn't even lock somebody in this office for a day, right? Without going to prison. And so that's how it works. And so that's the biggest thing affecting the last few weeks has been China. And then, of course, interest rates and inflation. So now, if you guys are aware of something, there's a little factory in Deckard called Nissan. Right, heard of that factory? Have they been working the last couple weeks? No, why not? Can't get parts, right? Because they get the parts they need are in the city of Shanghai. And those factories aren't running because those people aren't locked in, and so they can't get parts. And because they can't get parts, the factory here in America can't run. And so probably the biggest change in the last few weeks has been China's policy towards COVID. China has as a policy what's called zero COVID. We will lock down until there is no COVID. Now, the big question is this really what's going on? Because if you're familiar with something, China has a ruling Politburo, or Communist Party, and that Communist Party is about ready to make the current leader of China king for life. Now, almost every Chinese premier has come out of one city. You know what that city is? Shanghai, which is the only city that's what? And so the only person that's kind of a rival to the leader of China is the guy that's in charge of the province of Shanghai. And so I think, my personal view is this is a big political power play. He's trying to make sure that everyone understands that the leader of China is Xi, whatever you say his name, and he is the leader, and he is God. That's my opinion on it. And that's what he's doing. I think he's closing the whole country down because he is showing the world who the leader is. Right? And so the main issue for us economically is if you have shortages, that means what happens? You know what is inflation, right? Because when you can't get something, what does everybody want? Hey, Kimberly, go get a roll of toilet paper from the bathroom. So what happened in 2020, right? There was no toilet paper. So what did everybody want? Right? And so, it was funny because Clorox, which makes Clorox wipes, they built all these factories to make more Clorox wipes because they also ran out of Clorox wipes. And you would not believe how militantly I would Clorox wipe my house. I still do. Okay? And so every time you see Clorox wipes, what do you think I would do?
Stock up.
I buy it. Now the worst part about it is, what they should have done is charge me more money for my Clorox wipes after I bought the first one, right? Or after any of them. Because if the price goes up, people will start what? But I remember one of the TV anchors, I think it was Channel 4, Channel 5 News, was just trashing how could people charge more money for toilet paper. Well, the best way to fix it is, if it costs $5 a roll of toilet paper, people will start what? Doing something else. Or they will be very careful with toilet paper. They won't buy extra. They won't buy in. And so that's how we're seeing how China really affects our investments. And this really affects inflation. Because China is not working, because they don't have 1 billion workers, but 1 billion people are basically locked down, they can't make stuff. And because, are they still eating? Are those people still eating? Yeah. Are they still consuming stuff? Yeah, they're consuming less. So now you have the biggest manufacturing-based country in the world not running. Now, if you think there was a problem with car shortages before, think there'll be a more problem with car shortages in the future now, in the short term? Because until they start working again, these shortages aren't going away. Now, if you're familiar, it's the Omicron variant of COVID. So Omicron hit America. A lot of people got it. Very, very few people died. And it basically gave immunity for different forms of COVID. So now COVID deaths have dropped per person in the United States. And so China, though, is clearly either it's a power struggle or they are scared to death of COVID. Now, if you read China official numbers, they say less people died of COVID basically in China than the United States. But based on the reaction to COVID, do you believe that's true? I would say many, many more people died of COVID when that thing hit than they've ever told us. Because the way they're handling it, they're like scared to death. They're all going to die. So that tells me that many, many more people died than they reckoned. And so that's why they had this policy. And so the good news is eventually, just like we figured out here in America, you got to go back to work. Eventually, if you don't work, you don't eat. Right? Eventually, you have to go back to work. So probably the number one thing that it would change in the short term, that would help our investments in the short term, would be China announcing they're going back to work. A limited reopening. And so that the big question is, how much pain are they going to do before that happens? And it also shows you why it's important for the world to move factories outside of China. That one country can have such a broad effect. And so right now, what are companies doing around the world? They're moving factories out of China. They have been for the last 4 years. And then they're moving even more. Think about this, right? If you're Nissan and you can't make cars, what are they thinking about right now? They happy? The Japanese executives are happy about not making cars? Do Japanese people tend to like Chinese people? Do Chinese people like Japanese people? No. So what are they looking right now? You know that Japanese people are visiting places in Malaysia, Vietnam, Mexico to look at building what? Car plants. And so over time, this will change. And so this, if you guys are familiar with the Civil War in the United States, what was the main thing in the South that we grew during the Civil War? You guys know what it was? Cotton, right? What's that Alabama song? Pick a cotton but never got rich. And so, sorry, my jokes are really killing it today. And so, the South got together and they said, once the North blockaded all the ports in the South, what did the South do? Even before they blockaded the ports, we burned all of our cotton. Because the idea was we would jack the price up and we'd force the Europeans to get involved in the war. But what actually happened? There's this little country called India. You ever heard of it before? And where do you get most of your cotton from today? India. It's because of the Civil War. So Great Britain had owned control of India. They couldn't get cotton from us, so where did they buy their cotton from? Took them a little bit of time, but as soon as the next planting season came around, India started planting cotton. And the price of cotton went from here to here. And they've never grown as much cotton in the United States, at least per acre, as we grew this since because of that. Because when you show the world economy that you're not a good steward, they don't come back to you in 6 weeks. They never return. And that same thing is happening in China right now. China's where COVID started. China's under this policy, and so businesses are now even more so looking at moving out of the country. And more manufacturing, which is exactly what should have happened years ago, but it's exactly what's happening today. Okay, but this is probably, even though it's not talked about much, this is probably the biggest risk right now to the markets and the biggest risk to the economy. And it's irrational because no one thought, including myself, that after all the COVID shutdowns, they would do it again. To me, it's like, that's already over with. We already figured out that didn't work. You know? Whenever they did it, I think, Donald Trump was president, if you were to tell his biggest regret, it's probably shut the country down when COVID hit. Caused a lot of economic damage, more so than death. And so that is it. Then we have, of course, but all this causes inflation in the short term. Well, what is the Federal Reserve trying to fight? Inflation. Can the Federal Reserve chairman open the country China up? Can the President of the United States open China up? No, only one person can open China up, the President of China. Right? The King of China. We shouldn't even call him President. We should just call him King. Guess what he is. Okay? And so, now, you've got Russia and Ukraine. So, obviously, Russia and Ukraine continues to go on. Now, the good news is, yesterday, Putin did authorize a draft of Russian soldiers, but that is probably coming in the near future. Russia's May 9th parade, which was the parade for victory in Europe, was yesterday. And that's the big Russian parade where they always celebrate. It's weird to me, in America, we don't have military parades. Like, I can never tell you I've never been down Main Street and they rolled tanks down the street. Have you guys ever seen that? In World War II, they would have done it, but we really haven't done that in America ever. We don't see, we got the Air Force Base out here and they have air shows, but they don't take 1,000 fighters, put them in the air and fly them through the country. We just don't do that in America, so it's kind of odd. But apparently they do it in Poland too. And because the Russian ambassador to Poland was dumb, and he went to the parade. And so if you guys saw it yesterday, somebody took a bucket of red paint, doused it with it. Now, I don't know if you, but if I'm a Russian ambassador, I'm staying indoors. I'm not going outside. I'm not going outside anywhere, period. I might get shot. And so, even though the Ukrainian economy is not very big and the Russian economy is not very big, to give you an example, the Russian economy is $1.2 trillion. Did you guys know the state of Florida?
Say what?
Hey, go check out. Maybe. The state of Florida has a bigger economy than the country of Russia.
Really?
You guys know that? So economically, Russia is pretty much a non-starter economically. They're not important. But obviously, as we know, Russia and Ukraine are very important because they sell commodities. Now, as we know, we all need raw materials to make things, to eat, this kind of thing. So that's what Russia basically provides. And this is causing, what's happening in Russia and Ukraine is also causing a lot of inflation that's affecting our country and the rest. Because even though right now we have enough wheat, we have enough oil, we have enough natural gas, everybody's scared we're going to what? And so the first thing people do, it's the same fear back to COVID is, people are scared of, anytime you get scared of running out of something, what do you want to go do? You go, it's like vacations. The minute they opened COVID, everybody started going on vacation because they want to get that vacation done before. But here's the thing, there's a virus that can kill you. So you don't go around people. What's the first thing people do when they get outside? They go around people and they pack it together. Because, and it's just a natural, and it's true for countries too. If you look at Germany has been panic buying natural gas. They are buying more natural gas. They're buying any natural gas they can touch. And we'll see here the statistics. Now, Russia still supplies Europe with 40% of its natural gas and around 25% of its oil. And of course, it's very, when we look at economics, everybody wants to make money, right? And so everything is based on profitability. I mean, the reason why we don't get oil from Russia is, why do we not get much oil from Russia? You want to know why?
It's low grade.
No, that's what diesel's made out of. It's all, the only thing we got from Russia is diesel, by the way. You see the effect of that right there. Too far away. Why would we buy oil? I mean, why does U.S. oil from Alaska go to Japan? Because Japan's closer to Alaska than Los Angeles is.
What?
By miles. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, remember, only part of America that Japan actually conquered was some of those Aleutian Islands in World War II. So I think it's 1,200 miles or 1,000 miles away, from the islands. And so the issue is everything economically, and also because most of the oil that comes to America goes to the East Coast. It doesn't go into California. It goes up to the East Coast. And so they got to go. There's this thing called the North Pole, that kind of gets in the way. And so when you look at the biggest issue for the market right now is what Russia has done and Ukraine has done with energy is they're totally changing how stuff is delivered to your door. Because in the past, if you look at Russia, I'm not going to try drawing Russia, I won't make that mistake. But if we look at a map of Russia, Russia has a lot of energy. They've got a lot of oil, they've got a lot of natural gas, and all is shipped by pipeline daily to where? Europe. Now they would rather sell that stuff to China and India, right? Because China and India are very public saying, we're on your side, Russia. We are going to be with you. Now, the Indians are pretty smart because Indians are buying oil for $70 a barrel from Russia. So the reason why India is on Russia's side has got nothing to do with anything else but money. They're getting their oil for $30 a barrel less than we're getting it here. Right? That's why they do it. It's all about money. But they have this thing, I mean, you guys have heard it, it's called the Himalaya Mountains. You ever heard of those? So it's a little difficult to ship all that energy. It's located in the western part of Russia, down all the way through those mountain ranges down there. And so it's very, very inefficient. And so one of the things that I was watching a documentary on this weekend, Putin was working on was a deep port and huge icebreakers so they could ship all the oil and natural gas by boat all the way around the frozen part of Russia, all the way down into Asia. Now, by the way, who's closed right now? What country's closed? Oh, yeah. So how much oil are they selling to the Chinese? Less. That's why India is getting it for $70 a barrel, because China doesn't need it, because they're not open. You want to know why gas prices went down short term? Because China shut down. Guess what happens when China reopens? Gas prices are going up 50 cents a gallon. You don't have to be rocket science. China reopens, they're going to use gas. Gas is going to go up. That's what's going to happen. It's just the bottom line. And so, another reason to drill in America, but we won't get into politics. So, Russia still supplies lots of oil, but Russian oil is actually declining. So, to give you an example, Russian oil production is expected to decline this year by 17%. Because they have no way to get the oil from Russia to somebody that will buy it. And that's the weirdest part. The Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia and UAE, said yesterday or this morning, maybe it was last night, I can't remember when I read it, they said that they weren't sure that there's going to be enough oil production. The problem is the Middle Eastern countries are investing money to produce more oil. Our country is starting to now, but we're behind the curve. And Russia's oil production is actually going down. So the world needs this energy, but they won't buy it from Russia. And so you really see this with Russian oil. And let me show you why. So in 2016, natural gas by pipeline delivery was $2.63 per 1,000 cubic foot. I won't convert that to gallons. I should have. I did not. If it was liquefied natural gas, you guys know what liquefied natural gas is? You guys understand how that works? So if you think about natural gas is a gas. So if we go out here and we open up a natural gas well, what's going to happen? If it's right under this building, you're going to hear a real loud noise. You're going to hear a bunch of gas start going what? It's going to, everybody, you hear gas and say, you're right, there you go. And so, in order to ship natural gas across the ocean, there's no pipeline. So what do they have to do? They freeze it and turn it into liquid. They put it in a big tanker. This is why they widen the Panama Canal, if you guys didn't know that. They widen the Panama Canal just for the tankers for natural gas. And China paid for it because they need natural gas. That's why China bought the Panama Canal lease, because they want natural gas. And so, you turn it into liquid, you freeze it, you bring it back to Europe, you unfreeze it, it becomes what? Natural gas. Which is why liquefied natural gas in 2016 cost $4.71. That was a premium. Now, oddly enough, during the Syrian war, when Russia used chemical weapons on civilians, President Obama offered to sell Germany liquefied natural gas cheaply. And what did the Germans say? No. No, thank you. We get it cheaper from Russia. We don't care. So let's talk about where we are today. Okay, in January of this year, 2022, natural gas was $6.16 per unit for pipeline delivery in the United States. But liquefied natural gas, $39.06. That is a big number. Liquefied natural gas is almost 10 times more expensive than it was in 2016. Anybody want to know why? Right? Supply and demand. The Germans are scared they're going to run out of natural gas. So what are they doing? They're panicking buying. They're trying to buy. Just like, it's funny, everybody makes fun of that guy holding toilet paper. The countries are doing it too. They're scared to run natural gas, so they start doing it. And guess, so this means the Russians are getting more money for their natural gas, right? Because if the Germans are panic buying, they're paying for all those missiles that are blowing up the Ukrainians. And so this is what it costs to liquefy natural gas. Now, what's so crazy about this is since this was announced, so Germany doesn't have one working liquefied natural gas plant in their country. Not only does Germany get over 50% of their natural gas from Russia, they don't even have a plant that can receive gas from the United States. That's how bad it is for them. So since the war started, Roy says January, Europe has announced 23 new liquefied natural gas plants or expansions. A liquefied natural gas plant costs about $5 billion each, is our estimate today. And that's how many people are now trying to, because think about this, right? You buy it in America for $6.16, it gets to Europe, it's up $39. These people are making some money. They're making big money. They're making a lot of money, And so, what's interesting is Germany is about to do something unique. They've come up with a cool idea. Instead of building a new plant, if you guys are familiar, there's two pipelines called Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. The reason why they're called Nord Stream is it goes by the Norway water stream, right? It goes in the ocean. And it goes through the ocean because years ago, Russia said, you know what, we don't want to count on Ukraine sending our natural gas to Europe, so we'll build the ocean so it doesn't touch anybody, so nobody can stop it. Because every time Russia sends natural gas through Ukraine, they got to pay a tariff or a fee to Ukraine. So they wanted no fees, so they built a pipeline in the ocean. And guess who paid for it?
American oil companies.
German and American oil. Now, American oil companies, when they start, the first one they paid for, the second one, the last two presidents said, you build that, you won't do business in the United States. So those American companies did what? They didn't build it. But Shell did, so did BP and other companies. So now you have these huge pipelines that go into Germany through the ocean, and one of them is not being used. A big one. So what's smart, right? So what Germany's working on is they're working on these big boats that they can hook up to the pipeline directly off the ocean. The ship liquefied natural gas comes into to the other boat. Boats hook up. They convert it. They send it to the pipeline. That way, instead of them having to build a huge liquefied natural gas plant they can't build very quickly, they can get some boats and then just hook them up. Right? And so what that will do is that will allow liquefied natural gas to come into Europe cheaper. But here's the problem, right? You still got to build it on the other end, right? Like there's tons of natural gas here in Tennessee. Do we have a liquefied natural gas plant in Tennessee? No. Where are they all at? You guys know?
Texas or
Louisiana. They're all in Lake Charles, Louisiana. If you there's a gentleman here from here that actually works right next to one of our customers here. And that's where it all goes into. But there's no pipelines for America to get it, any extra ones to get it there. Now I always thought, Tennessee has a bunch of natural gas, mainly in East Tennessee, but we don't have, and we also have this city called Memphis, right on the Mississippi River. So to me, I've always thought, well, why don't we build a pipeline from East Tennessee to Memphis, and build an LNG plant there because we don't need anybody else. We can go straight to the ocean. We don't need the government to approve a pipeline. The reason why the pipeline from Canada wasn't approved is it has to go through state lines, which means it's regulated by the federal government. If it's in state lines, I grew up in St. Louis, and it's illegal to have a casino in Missouri, or it was. But it's not illegal to have a riverboat. So right where I grew up, and if you drive by there, there's two huge lakes off the Mississippi River. You're like, why are these things here on the side of the Missouri River? Well, they built parking garages in these boats. They called them river boats. And then they built the casinos next to them. And so they call them, and so eventually they approved it because it's illegal to have a casino, but it wasn't illegal to have a riverboat. And so somebody creative, and they just built a huge parking garage. So if you go to the Missouri River, the biggest tourist attraction used to be in Missouri, was the Ameristar Casino on the Missouri River in St. Charles County, where I grew up, because they built it in the river as a casino, and as tourists. And so that is the same kind of concept here with natural gas. Now, the bottom line, though, is energy is still flowing through the world. And actually, Russia is producing less energy today because they can't find somebody to buy it. The problem is, tell me, if I could work 20% less and make 5 times as much money, would I be happy? That's the problem, right? So, with Germany and Europe hoarding and buying as much natural gas as they can, the Russians are actually getting richer. At least Putin is. He's personally getting richer because he owns those companies by getting all that money. And so does that give him an incentive to stop the war? So what's the only true way to stop the war? You have to produce other energy. Somebody else has to produce a competing energy source, just like the British did in the Civil War when they moved cotton there and moved stuff here. Now, to tell you, America is working on it because you know America's working on it. Texas recorded the most earthquakes in its history last month. What does that mean? They're fracking for natural gas and oil. And if they recorded the most earthquakes in their history last month, what does that tell you that they're probably doing right now? They're drilling for a lot of energy. Because that's the bottom line. So the market is working, but here's to see how this works out. But this also contributes to inflation. Because when TVA in their divine wisdom shut down the coal power plants in Tennessee, and they converted them to natural gas. And they actually even blew them up. They didn't just deconvert them. They're not even there anymore. They blew them up. And so what happened is that causes more inflation, right? Because when it's $39.06 for liquefied natural gas, and it's $6.16 when you get it at your house, why would they sell the gas to you when they could sell it to people in Europe for $39? I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be selling any gas to America. I'd be sending all as I could overseas, $39 a pop. That's a big difference. And so now, just so you guys know, for utility bills, residential prices were $12.04 for delivery. In 2016, they were $10.05. So what's interesting is, what's missing to me is, natural gas prices have almost tripled, but somehow the utility companies are only going up 20%. That tells you that utility companies are making quite a bit of money. When they were selling it for $2.63, they're buying it for $2.63, selling it for $10. Now they're buying it for $6.16, selling it for $12. So there's obviously some money there they're making, for sure there's some profitability. And so all this contributes to more inflation. Now the big, of course, culprit for, does anybody have questions about this? Obviously, what we're seeing right now is everything that's invested in the market is dropping, and the Federal Reserve is a big reason why. The Federal Reserve wants the stock market to go down. Anybody know why? 2020, they wanted it to go up. Why do they want it to go down now? It's not for valuations. Actually, the market traded at 16 times profit, the lowest the stock market has traded since 2013. Lowest in 9 years. What do you guys think? Why does the Federal Reserve want the stock market to go down?
Interest rates would go up.
But why? What's the point? What do they really want to do? Because it's clear, 2 weeks ago, last week on a Friday after the market had gone down 1,000 points and gone up 900 points, the day before, one of the Federal Reserve ladies got on TV and was laughing about the stock market going down and how it needed to happen. So it's clearly obvious they want the stock market to drop right now. Why?
Inflation?
Yes. They believe, I'm not saying they're right, but they believe that if you see the value of your accounts going down, you'll spend less money. They think you'll spend less money. And if you spend less money, there'll be less demand, which means inflation will start what? Going down. And so even though some of these really good companies, I'm not saying you should buy this company, but look at Netflix, right? Netflix is down 70% this year. They trade, another one is the Moderna. Moderna is down 80% this year, and they trade at 3 times profit. Their stock is so cheap that they basically every 3 years make the price back, right? And people are still buying more vaccines around the world. They're not even buying them here in America, they're buying them. They want the value of your accounts to go down because they want inflation to go down. It's clearly obvious because if you listen to the way they talk, every time the market gets up a little bit, one of them gets on TV and they start what? Saying something negative. Like yesterday, when the Federal Reserve Chairman said, we don't really know what's going on, can't control it. So that is definitely, at the moment, their policy. And so the Fed has risen rates to 0.75% on the short-term rate. They're going to do it again next month. They're going to be at 1.25%, so they'll be at 1.5%. They would have risen rates to 24%. They're likely to raise interest rates 2.5% this year. But mortgage rates have already increased. Mortgage rates a year ago on a 30-year mortgage was 2.96%. Today it's 5.27%. So I think they want mortgage rates to be 7.5%. Now why are they trying to do that? When people buy their first house, do they think about paying back $300,000? What do they think about? Making the payment. All they care about is the payment. That's all people care about. When that payment goes up, they can't make the payment, right? So on a $300,000 house, if interest rates go up 2%, that's how much money in income? It's $500 a month. So if your payment goes up $500 a month, people can't spend that money on what? Other things, right? It's one of the things is our current president has made a poor decision and he wants to pay off student loan debt. Because if they pay off student loan debt, then he thinks people will be what? Richer, they'll be doing better. But I'm here to tell you, it won't happen. If you don't pay off your own bills, you'll never pay them off. And you'll just borrow more money. You'll actually incentive. It's like if this morning my kids didn't want to eat muffins. Okay? And if you ask my wife, she probably thought I went too hard on her, but I made them eat the muffins. Because if they're going to be picky and they're not going to eat the food, they're going to be picky all the time. And so every time I make something, I have to make something else. I don't want to do it. So guess who ate the muffins? They all ate the muffins. But if I don't make them eat the muffins, they're not going to eat the eggs next week. They're not going to eat bacon the week after. They're going to be brats. And I'm not having brats. So it's a very easy solution. So they're going to eat what I make. And they don't like it. They don't get anything. They lost their tablets. They started losing stuffed animals. We just started burning everything we could find. And they, all of a sudden, they ate all their food, and they left a smile on their face.
You're a bad dad.
That's right. And so the same thing is true with student loans. If you pay off student loan debt, what are colleges going to do? They're going to charge less? I mean, whenever Governor Haslam made community college free in Tennessee, did tuition go down? It actually went up 3 times. And books are now $1,000. Right? You're telling me the books that they made 30 years ago cost more money today than they did 30 years ago? We've got tablets, and we can, yeah, right. All it is inflationary. Whenever you print money, you cause inflation. And so, this is what the Federal Reserve is doing. And so, mortgage rates are rising. And it's very likely the Federal Reserve is behind the curve. I would actually argue with you right now that probably in the next 2 months, inflation is going to be gone. Unless there's shortages in China. But generally speaking, inflation is going to start going away, and the economy is going to start what? Well, either that or we're going into recession. And the Federal Reserve, which is raising rates, will start what? Cutting them. Look what happened yesterday, right? Mortgage, the 10-year Treasury hit 3.19 and ended the day below, just say, I don't remember in the day, but let's say it was 2.99. It went down. Well, the Federal Reserve is trying to raise rates to get rid of inflation, and interest rates are going down. What is the market telling you that actually think is happening? We're going to hit a recession. Rates only go down when there's a recession, or we're close to a recession. So with the market, and this is why the market has been so screwy lately, is it's trying to figure out, is inflation the problem, or is recession the problem? But we know there's a problem. And so when you don't know which way to go, what do most people do? Nothing. And that's what you're seeing with the Federal Reserve. And so this creates a pretty cool opportunity, right? Because now that you see these mortgage rates are at 5.27%, I checked on CDs yesterday, and I was surprised that CDs are almost 3% on 2 and 3 year CDs. Again, on the actual market, not at local banks. Now, I've talked to local banks, they're not raising their rates. But the actual broader market in the world, the rates are gone up. So as investors, this also creates opportunity because we're now seeing bond funds paying 7% in some cases. That's a 7% rate on a more guaranteed type valuation, right? And so, but let's give you, let's see, what does the Fed do next? So let's say the Fed has a couple options, right? Let's say the Fed is perfect. And they get the porridge just right. They get the stock market to drop a little bit, but not too much. They get interest rates to go up, they get inflation under control, and they just hit it like many of there's got a gun, and I got a gun, and we shoot at each other, and the bullets hit each other mid-flight. Perfect, right? That's a possibility. I don't have a gun. Anyway, but that is a possibility. That's an option that could happen. But is that likely to happen based on what you've seen in history? Did they stop the housing crisis before it happened in 2008? Did they prevent China from making all of our stuff, and now we can't get stuff from China? The government is always behind the what? They're always behind the curve. They're always behind the 8 ball. And so another option is they mess up. They raise rates too high, they cause a recession. So how do we make money on that? Right now.
You gotta tell us.
Sure. So if they cause a recession, then the thing to buy is what? It's probably going to be moving from short-term bonds to longer-term bonds, right? Because if they're raising rates now, what are they going to be doing soon? Cutting them. So if you're locked in at 7% and rates go down to 3%, did you make money? Oh yeah. Because your bond is locked in at a higher rate. You know? If you that's a big thing to do. And then also, of course, some of these stocks are on sale. You know, let's look at Disney, right? So Disney made a terrible decision. They decided to get involved in politics. Now, I'm going to tell you guys right now, You guys can all vote. How you gonna vote? I'm gonna vote how I'm gonna vote. But my job here is not to tell you how to vote. My job here is to make you money. And so that's my job. Disney's job is for me to go with my kids and not tell me what should be in my kids' classroom. That's none of their business. They are an entertainment company. We're there to be entertained. If you're focusing on my kids' classroom, you're not entertaining my kids, you're doing something stupid. So all Disney has to do today to increase their stock's down, by the way, I think 45% this year, is one decision: fire their CEO. Think they're going to do that? He's getting fired. He's going to get fired. He'll be gone, because it's like, the Russians won't kill Putin, maybe, but they should. Because if they kill him, then Germany reopens their doors. They don't build. Once the Germans build new LNG plants, are they going to ever care about the Russians anymore? No. But right now, they still care about the Russians. They can still stop all the things they're going to do. So what should the Russians do right now? They should shoot them.
But the talk is that the heir apparent to Putin is worse than Putin.
But it doesn't matter, because you think about it as an investor. Yes, it does matter long term for the country, and politically it matters for us, for Americans. But right now, the United States and Europe are the most aligned they've been since World War II.
Yeah.
Norway and Sweden and Finland are getting ready to join NATO.
Right.
They were neutral. Not Sweden, not Finland. Sweden was neutral in World War II. You guys remember the Russians invaded Finland, the Germans invaded Norway, and Sweden's here in the middle, and they were neutral. And now they're going to go to the United States. And so now the heir apparent might be worse than Putin. You might even but if you just went out there and there's a new guy in town. There's a new, and I'll be pretty honest with you. Disney is not going to change their policy. Disney's going to maintain their same political viewpoint they've had. But if they get rid of their figurehead, they can go back to the market and say, we've changed. Didn't mean they changed, right? Like today I might have been hard on my kids to eat the muffin. Maybe tomorrow morning I'm tired and I don't do it. So they get away with it, right? The key is that's, from the investment standpoint, until Germany builds those plants to receive the natural gas, they still are doing business with Russia. And it's one thing, I'm from the show me state, right, Missouri. You can tell me all you want, but you gotta show me. So you can, the Germans can talk about doing all this stuff, but until they start moving dirt around, you don't know, right? Like there's a big grocery store that could come here to Manchester. But until we start seeing dirt moving around, it's all just a big dream. Once that first footer goes in, it's probably getting done. That's the key. And so so if a recession hits, as investors, long term, is long-term bonds are going to be a great deal, because eventually rates will go down, and when they go down, those bonds will go up in value. Because think about this: if you were locked in right now at 7 or 8%, and you had all your money in that, would you feel pretty good? Yeah, because you would have lost any money. That's the whole thing. And so that's the same idea of recession. Another option is they don't get inflation under control. But even though they're all talking the big game, even though they say they're going to control inflation, what's going on in China, what's going on in Ukraine, and what's going on in the United States is so powerful that they can't get it under control quickly. Then the price of everything starts going what? Up faster, up higher, right? So what do you want to own if that happens? Well, the big one's commodities, right? Look, man, last year in December we said, we're going to buy some natural gas. We're going to buy liquefied natural gas futures. Did you make some money this year? Yeah, you just retired. You probably put in 5 cents and walked away with $5,000. And so that's the best thing to own in an inflation environment. And also, stocks will hold their value, right? Because, look, this year, this quarter, U.S. companies are making 12% more money this quarter than they made last year. And their stocks are going down. The market right now trades at 16 times profit. Last year, it traded at 26 times profit. So even though the stock market's going down, profits are still doing what? They're still going up. These companies, I mean, yeah, if you're Peloton, if you're a few companies out there, Disney, their profits aren't doing what they want to do. But if you're, Microsoft, if you're Apple, Apple had huge earnings. Now maybe after those people get unlocked out of those factories, maybe they can't build them. But you think Apple's going to charge less for the products? They don't have enough. They'll just charge what? I mean, what do you think a new iPhone costs right now? Probably this next at the end of the year. I don't know what it cost last year. I think it's $1,200.
What was this?
iPhone. Probably $1,400 by the end of the year. They can't get them. Guaranteed they'll be selling them on the black market for $2,000. You guys ever had? There was a Xbox, something that the kids wanted. I don't know. It's one of the Xboxes, and they didn't have any, and so they were selling the black market for $2,000 more than what they cost retail. And that's the same idea with supply shortage. So they can't control inflation. Commodities and stocks look like really good bets, and bonds look like terrible bets, right? And so this, and then the fourth option is stagflation. That we have lots of inflation with a recession, which is what the market is clearly pricing in right now. If inflation goes up and the economy goes down, then everything loses. That's the only thing that wins is cash. And even it loses, it just doesn't lose as much because inflation hurts cash. And so now, obviously, I didn't talk about this. One of the reasons why in a recession stocks will do better is because what's the most expensive thing for every company? Labor, people. So whenever you start making less money, what do you start doing? What do companies start doing? They start firing people, right? You want to know why they always fire 60-year-olds at companies? Huh? Yeah, they make the most money. So if you're looking at a sheet and you're like, well, this guy makes $10,000, this guy makes $1 million. Off with his head. Makes some more money, right? And so then the companies look at that and say, well, we just saved $1 million. So we go back to our shareholders and say, the economy's not doing great, but guess what? Our profits are still in control. Because they're profitable. And how do CEOs get paid, right? How do they get paid? Stock. They get paid with stock options. It's not an accident, right? Because if the stock doesn't do well, they don't make as much money. Well, who likes making less money? Nobody. So a lot of people say that most CEOs are narcissistic. There was a study that 70% of them are narcissistic. Well, that's why, because most people would be narcissistic if they had control. And so at the end of the day, if CEO of Disney right now, right? Stock's getting destroyed. He's not looking good. What should he do? He could resign. I'm not trying to get political here, but if you guys remember a few years ago, Chick-fil-A, right? Chick-fil-A went in there and they made a stand against LGBT and their company. And they had this big thing, these big lines were going. Well, about a year and a half later, maybe a year later, they put out a little memo saying, well, we're not actually against LGBT stuff. We're actually all for LGBT people. We gave money to them, and they supported them. Well, why were they doing that? Money. People weren't eating at their store because they thought they were anti-LGBT, and so what did they start doing? They want them as customers. They have workers in there. And so Disney can do the same thing. But Disney, unfortunately, has made a very big mistake. They made the same mistake Wells Fargo made in 2016. They publicly went against a governor who's probably running for president soon. So the only way, I think, for Disney to fix is off with his head. But if the CEO was smart, he would ask for a meeting with the governor of Florida. He would go to him, he would apologize, and he'd beg for forgiveness. And they'd whip him a little bit, and then he'd probably still keep his job. And his stock would go up, and he'd make all the own stock more money. And his job as CEO is to what? Make money for the shareholders. That's his job. So that's what companies will do. If a recession hits, they will fire people. When they fire people, unemployment goes up, and the Federal Reserve does what? They cut interest rates. So the good news is, One of these four things is going to happen, right? The bad news is you have to know exactly which one it is. But generally speaking, to me, it seems like the market's getting it right. The market's saying that rates went up, they're going down because they think a recession is imminent. That if it's not happening, a recession is defined as when the economy declines in 3 consecutive quarters. You guys probably missed the headline, but last week they came out with the first quarter number. The economy declined in the first quarter this year, the first time since COVID. So if the economy was slowing down early in the year, and now you can't get supplies and things, what do you think the economy is doing right now? It's probably slowed. We've probably been negative quarter again. So the big question is, if there's a midterm election this year, right? And what do you not want to go into an election with the economy doing? Going down, right? And inflation being up. So the party in power not looking so hot, right? So what do they want to start doing? What did they say yesterday they wanted to do?
Spend more money.
Print more money. Spend more money. The problem is all the money they printed last year is a big reason why we're seeing all this inflation this year. So not getting political, but it's kind of like you just, my son used to call his hand a cookie jar. Slap it. And then he puts his hand back in, slap it again. Eventually you hope you get slapped enough where they start saying, that's not a good idea. I'm not doing it. And so that's the same thing we're looking at here as investors is what happens. So it's a very, very, very good chance that the reason why interest rates went down yesterday is because the market thinks we're heading to recession right now. And so the good news for investors is the stock market's already fallen 17% from the high. And usually a recession is a little bit over 20% fall. So most of the drops should already be priced in. Now, the bad news is stock market falls first. What falls next? Real estate. Stock market goes down first, and the real estate goes next. Stock market comes back first, the real estate comes back next. And you're already starting to see it. A lot of houses that were selling quickly, those for sale signs are what? They're still there. They're still there. And so that, all this stuff in particular though, is they're trying to get inflation under control. The issue is unfortunately, this has been very messy. It's been very messy. And and for the stock market, if China stays closed for a lot longer, it's going to get messy. If you really want one thing right now affecting anything else is the shortages of stuff coming from China. That is the number one thing affecting everybody right now. And it's a little bit out of our control, right? Can't make it work. But here's the thing. They announced tomorrow we're doing limited reopening of Shanghai. What's going to happen? They're going to go way up. So we're just waiting until that happens. Now, just so you guys know from a technical level, 3,800 on the S&P is probably a good buy level, which is we're about 200 points. The market was zigzagging while I don't know what's in the last hour, but that is probably the good buy level because that would be the long-term support level. But for instance, small cap stocks are down 28% this year. Chinese stocks are down 30% this year. Long-term bonds are down 20% this year. Intermediate-term bonds are down 8 to 10% this year. And so all of these things are much cheaper than they were a year ago, or for valuations, or even 6 months ago. And so there is a huge upside in these areas, based on what's going to happen. And so that's what we got to see what happens. But if China reopens like expected, and we go into a recession, like I think it's expected at this point, then all this stuff will start playing out. Just like if you guys remember in 2008, everybody thought U.S. companies would not recover their profits. And what's the first thing companies did? They did massive layoffs. Unemployment actually just recovered in 2017. We've been laid off that year, right? And so the same thing is about to happen here. If corporate profits start going down, the first thing companies will do to protect their investments is start firing people. And I'm not saying it's morally what I like to talk about, but it's just the bottom line. It'll happen. Anybody have any questions about this? Anything else? It's quiet today.
So you put 25% in one of the in each of the four options?
No, I mean, if you think about it, if the Fed gets it just right, stock market recovers, it's fine. Commodities go down in value. Real estate goes down in value a little bit, but not massive. If there's a recession, stock market's already pricing in a recession. So maybe it goes down another 6 or 7%, then it bounces back up, goes back up. Because as soon as we start firing people, stock's going to go up. Bonds are going to go up in value too because they'll cut the rates. Here, if inflation can't be stopped, commodities do well and stocks do well, bonds get killed. Here, stagflation, cash and stocks stay trading makes sense. So to me, stocks are still your best edge of all the options. But I personally feel like it's probably time to start buying some longer term bonds that we haven't bought in 15 years. Because when you start looking at getting locked in at long-term rates at 6 or 7%, they're going to get inflation under control. And once they do, that's a good deal.
So are you saying the bond history the last 15 years is not
Way
good?
low. Yeah.
Not good.
Well, basically, since 2008, interest rates have been low.
Right.
And we're getting ready. Yesterday, we almost breached 3.2. You know, and so, but they have been artificially stimulating real estate market. And now they're not doing that anymore.
How they been doing that?
So what the Federal Reserve is doing was they were buying $85 billion a month in bonds.
Okay.
And so what that means is they'll loan money to me no matter what the interest rate is at $85 billion a month. Well, when you add $85 billion a month in money chasing real estate, you've added more supply. Which means the bank, which was charging 5% on a mortgage, has to charge 2% on a mortgage. And so now you've been artificially inflating real estate market. Now, the big question would be, so now they're going to start selling $95 billion a month. Is they stick to it? Do they actually keep doing it? Now they should do it. They should reduce the price of real estate. They should make it more affordable for Jimena and Kimberly to buy their first house. But do you think they will? Do Kimberly and Jimena vote? Jimena does, Kimberly doesn't, right? Picking on her, she just said that. And you guys can all talk to her after. How many of you guys vote?
How many vote?
Everybody here votes probably except for Kimberly, right? And so if all the politicians work for people that vote, who do they care about? Do politicians really care about younger people as voters?
Oh, yeah.
No. No way.
Now they do.
Lowest voting percentage of any group in the country.
Yep. Don't have time.
The average age of our presidents right now, I mean, both the last guys ran, they're both 80 years old, they're both Caucasians, right? Does that represent what America looks like? No. America's, about 60, I think 5 or 60% Caucasian, 40%, blended races. 70% of the voted were white in the last election. You want to know why? The politicians only care about who? Votes. Right? So, and the people that already have houses tend to be older, right? So do you like hearing that your house is going to go down in value? No. And you vote. So that's the question. So my opinion is they won't do it. They should do it. But I don't think they'll do it. I think they'll stop burning money. Yeah.
Another chapter of the book here is we're borrowing close to $3.5 billion a day
Yes.
on debt.
Yes.
Okay, the Fed raises the rates.
Correct.
Any money printed after that is gonna be reflected. So.
I got paid on it.
So our $1 trillion deficit this year, and I guess what I'm trying to say is the increase in the interest rate is not gonna be reflected on old money borrowed, is it?
It will when it comes due.
Oh, really?
It comes due every 10 years. That's why the 10-year treasury matters so much. And you're right. That's another big issue is as our debt has gone up and the rate goes up, money that could have been spent on modernizing the military or for helping for education or whatever, it doesn't get spent on that. It gets spent on paying interest on the debt, which causes more inflation because they end up printing more money. And so, the end of the day, if you look at the history of inflation, commodities are your best performer. They're the best performing investment in inflation. Because when Burger King costs $9 for a water and a medium fry and a Whopper, that's inflation. Okay? I used to get bonds of 99 cents for a Whopper, and the girls have heard me say this every day probably, 99 cents for a Whopper and about 50 cents for a thing of fries. And we shared as a group, $3 for eating lunch. Now, if I want to eat lunch, it'd be $20 at Burger King. Not some nice, well, Burger King's nice, but not,
So what's gonna occur, I won't be here, what's gonna occur when the interest rate on the deficit is $1 trillion a year, and we're pulling in maybe 3 trillion, 4 trillion?
Well, the thing about it is, and what's misleading there is actual revenue for the government is the highest it's ever been this year.
Right, it is.
So it's probably, I bet government collections do over $4 trillion. So what you're seeing though is inflation, generally speaking, what inflation does is it rewards investors, it rewards commodity investors, and it hurts people getting started in life. It hurts people that are, it's harder for people to get the middle class.
Right.
And so inflation, of course, creates what you see in South America. Wealthy people, poor people.
No in between.
No in between. And that's why everybody comes to America. It's because they're trying to get away from, they don't know it, they're trying to get away from inflation. Sorry I'm going over, but Venezuela and Argentina should be wealthier than the United States based on their resources. They're not, because of inflation. Those are two countries that should be the wealthiest countries on earth. Venezuela should be the wealthiest country on earth. They have more energy, more resources, higher educated people than any country in the world. Well, they did 20 years ago. And they're one of the poorest countries on earth. Because it's kind of like, I went to high school with a lot of people that are really smart, but they never did in their lives. They should be doing better, but they're not. So it really doesn't matter what should work. What matters is what does work, right? And so when it comes to the debt, it's the same concept. And so the answer of printing more money just causes more inflation. Now, look, me as an investor, I want to own stocks, right? Even though it's painful, even though the market's going down, I want to own those things. Because Burger King's charging $9 for a Whopper meal, right? And so when they charge $15 for a Whopper meal, if I own stock in that, I'm getting money. And everybody's got to eat. And even if the market goes down, I don't care, because they're charging $15 for a Whopper meal. That's how I look at it. And that's what you're seeing this year. Even though the economy, look at this, the economy went down 1% in the first quarter, but profits are up. It's because of inflation.
I got one last question.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe my premise is wrong, maybe, I don't know. Okay, say we live in a safer, better world. We did not have COVID, we did not have Russia conflict. Okay, to me, the driving force that's affecting the Fed and all these other factors is, especially the United States. We move product A to product B, product A from this location to this location. So the number one word to me in all of this is energy.
Yeah.
Because, if we didn't have these other variables, and now we are, and I've been reading a lot of articles and seeing a lot of things, these green companies that are coming up, GM is saying we're going to quit manufacturing fossil vehicles in 2035. That's right down the road. We have been doing this for 124 years, right? And they're wanting to do this changeover in a matter of 10 or 15 years. Right now, a lot of these solar and wind companies are having supply chain problems.
Correct.
So a lot of these deadlines that they're trying to push by the government, these political environmentalists and green people, is not going to make it. So we really got another underlying situation here.
Well, it's all about supply and demand. So what you're saying there, Steve, is they can't get the steel. They can't get, like for instance, apparently they make solar wind cells. Apparently 80% of the frame is made in Vietnam. And there's a complaint on anti-fair trade practices, as they won't let them import the panels to make the solar panels.
Well, my question is, if we became energy independent,
Yeah.
and we didn't have these other variables, if we brought back the pipeline that Biden canceled, and the world thinks we're anti-fossil fuel. So the global oil price, is $108, $5 right now, where it used to be 30, 40, 2-3 years ago. Do you think that would
Bring down inflation?
bring down inflation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, if the United
So
States.
energy is the key.
Energy is the key. And if you look at in 1982, the last time when the Federal Reserve raised rates like this, what did President Reagan do? He went to Saudi Arabia and said, pump oil, open the well. And we went through from 82 until today, we've gone through a cycle where inflation has continually dropped since 1982.
Wow.
And so energy is the key. And, but just because the president does something doesn't mean anything, because the president that saw the biggest increase in U.S. oil production was President Barack Obama, who was against oil drilling. The free market went in and started drilling 5 million barrels a day more, well, actually 7 billion barrels a day more oil in his presidency.
Right.
And so when we say that there's earthquakes in Texas, that means they're drilling for oil. Which means that oil production in the United States is rapidly increasing. We just haven't seen it yet. Because it takes a while for those wells to get built and start getting that oil to market. But I know one thing, when you see fire, when you see smoke, there's fire, right? And so when you see earthquakes, you see drilling. And so even if our country makes poor decisions, which we have, the business world will start drilling other places. And they'll start doing stuff. And so, Canada is a major supplier of diesel fuel. Diesel is the key for inflation because everything touches diesel. And so the Keystone Pipeline was, to my knowledge, was bringing heavy crude for diesel down there. And so if that diesel won't come here, Canada will send it over the Rockies to China. But they'll still get it to market.
Right.
But it's more expensive now to get it down to Louisiana and Texas than, because you have to go through the Rockies, Panama Canal, it's more. So now you're going to pay more for your stuff. So it's all about efficiency stuff. But the market will bring efficiency. If China stays closed, they'll move those factories to other places. Because nobody likes not making money. And so every time there's a recession, every time one of these things happens, it's a good thing. Because it makes the world more efficient. If Russia wants to be stupid, if they want to blow up people and kill people that are poor for no reason, they can just be poor with them. That's what it does. And so it'll clean up, and they'll be, as investors, we'll make money, and this inefficiency will go away. And it'll keep going away. It's the same reason why, if you look at the Middle East before oil was the wealthiest part on earth. They cut off trade with Europe and China. So why did Columbus go out to America? They were trying to find a way to go around the Turks in Constantinople. And so then they came up with America. And all of a sudden the Spanish, who were just a bunch of warriors, a bunch of poor people, became very rich when they conquered the Incas and the Aztecs. Then the English built an empire on trade, right? So this is the story of life. This is the story of investors. Queen Ferdinand and Isabella, they were investing in Columbus, just like you invest in stocks. And so this stuff will work. Thanks for tuning in on Facebook Live, and thanks for your time today. Sorry we're way over.
Good job.